Thanks for joining us. I'm Marshall Keeley. The clock is ticking until the 2024 election. Along with the highly contested race for the White House, there are a number of important races on the ballot, including one of Pennsylvania's U.S. Senate seats. And we're going over some of the most important information you need to know ahead of the election and verifying claims candidates have made throughout this election cycle. Pennsylvanians are starting to send in their mail-in ballots for the 2024 general election. Data from the Pennsylvania Department of State shows of the almost 1.9 million mail-in ballots requested, more than 1 million have already been returned. Viewer Marcia wrote us with a question about what happens if there are issues with the mail-in ballot. She asks, quote, USA Today reported that PA election officials will be able to notify voters of any mistakes in their mail-in ballots and let them make changes. Is this true? And if so, what mistakes would they report to the voter? A spokesperson for the Department of State tells us this varies from county to county, writing, quote, counties in Pennsylvania have discretion in whether and how to notify voters when an issue is observed with their mail-in ballot envelope, as well as whether or how the voter may address that issue. So we reached out to every county in our viewing area. Cumberland, Franklin, and Lancaster County officials told us they do not allow ballot curing, but the statewide Uniform Registry of Electors, or SURE system, would send voters an email or call them if their ballot is rejected due to a signature or date issue on the outer envelope of their ballot. The voter could then reapply for a mail-in ballot or surrender their ballot at the polls and vote provisionally on Election Day. Juniata County officials say they do not allow ballot curing and voters would not be notified of any issues with the ballot. Officials from Mifflin County say they are calling voters individually and allowing them to come into the county elections offices to fix their mistakes if there are issues. If you want to check on the status of your ballot, visit pavoterservices.pa.gov. And keep in mind, October 29th is the last day to request mail-in ballot or absentee ballots, and Election Day is November 5th. Marshall Keeley, Fox 43 News. In their first ever face-to-face meeting, former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris took to the stage in Philadelphia, debating for more than an hour and a half. So let's jump right in with this claim from the former president.
She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison.
This claim needs context. A recent CNN report revealed Kamala Harris's answers to an ACLU candidate survey from 2019 before the Democratic primary that year. The survey asks, quote, as president, will you use your executive authority to ensure that transgender and non-binary people who rely on the state for medical care, including those in prison and immigration detention, will have access to comprehensive treatment associated with gender transition, including all necessary surgical care? Harris responded, yes. While she's in favor of LGBTQ rights, the campaign has not said if she still holds that position. Finally, here's the vice president's claim about her opponent's stance on abortion.
He will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages.
This claim is undetermined. The former president has sent mixed signals about his plans for abortion policy, saying in a March radio interview that he was, quote, leaning towards a 15-week abortion ban. Since then, he's repeatedly said the decision should be left up to the states and did not give a direct answer when asked if he would sign a national abortion ban during the debate. Project 2025, a policy document from a conservative think tank made up of former Trump administration officials, does not call for a national ban on abortion, but suggests taking steps to limit access. It does suggest the CDC require, quote, monitoring and reporting for complications due to abortion, end quote. The plan is not an official Republican platform, and Trump again distanced himself from the document in the debate. With your Verify, I'm Marshall Keeley. A recent ad from a Republican Political Action Committee is digging into Pennsylvania U.S. Senator Bob Casey's voting record.
He made sure COVID relief checks could go to convicted felons. When reasonable people tried to stop murderers and rapists from getting checks, Casey voted to send them checks anyway.
So let's verify using roll call voting results from the U.S. Senate. The American Rescue Plan of 2021 offered $1,400 stimulus checks to Americans during the pandemic with broad eligibility guidelines. During debate on the Senate floor, Republicans introduced an amendment to the bill that would have barred convicted felons from receiving relief. Casey and every other Democrat in the Senate voted against the measure, and it failed. Casey then voted for the bill's final passage in the Senate. Both votes were split 50-49 on party lines. So we can verify this claim is true. During debate on the Senate floor at the time, Democratic U.S. Senator Dick Durbin explained the reason many in his party opposed the amendment that would have prevented prisoners from receiving checks, saying, quote, "Given the stark racial disparities in our criminal justice system, this would cause the most harm to black and brown families and communities already harmed by mass incarceration," end quote. It's worth noting stimulus checks from the CARES Act, which was supported by many Republicans, also went to convicted felons in 2020 during the Trump administration. The IRS initially blocked those payments to prisoners, but a federal judge ruled that they had to be distributed, noting nothing in the bill excluded convicted felons. With your Verify, I'm Marshall Keeley. Pennsylvania's major party U.S. Senate candidates are duking it out over fentanyl. Democratic Senator Bob Casey released this ad early this month, taking aim at Republican nominee Dave McCormack's time as CEO of Bridgewater Associates.
As CEO of Wall Street's largest hedge fund, McCormack invested millions in China's biggest fentanyl producer.
So let's verify using these sources. The ad references a report published by the Keystone in July and centers around Bridgewater Associates' investments in a Chinese company called Humanwell Healthcare Group. A 2021 report from Research Institute Rand Corporation shows Humanwell Healthcare controls 90% of the domestic market of China's legal fentanyl production, saying the drug is, quote, used in medical applications. These Bridgewater Associates tax filings with the IRS and Department of Labor show 7 of the company's hedge funds invested a total of close to $1.7 million in Humanwell Healthcare in 2021, while McCormack was CEO. McCormack told the American Enterprise last year, quote, "I was the CEO, so whatever we did, I'm responsible for," end quote. So this claim is true. In response, McCormack released this ad.
"I never made any investments in the makers of illegal fentanyl. Ever."
This claim is also true, but does not address the claim made in the Casey ad. Bridgewater Associates' investments under McCormack were in a Chinese company legally producing fentanyl for medical purposes. However, it's difficult to determine if any Humanwell-made fentanyl is entering the United States or if Bridgewater's investments helped produce drugs that later entered the country. The Rand report says, quote, "It is difficult to analytically separate the legitimate chemical and pharmaceutical business from rogue groups of individuals working within the business to manufacture and trade synthetic opioids and precursor chemicals," end quote. This week, McCormack released another ad.
The Philadelphia Inquirer says Casey personally owns stock in the same Chinese fentanyl producer he attacked McCormack for.
Senator Casey's personal financial disclosures include a 529 savings plan with $15,000 to $50,000 invested in a Massachusetts college mutual fund, whose investment strategies Casey does not have control over. That fund is partially invested in an index fund called Fidelity Series Global, 0.001% of which is Humanwell Healthcare stock. That means Casey's investment is valued at between 1/8 of a cent and 3 cents. But in its investment guide, Fidelity Investments says, quote, "Note that mutual fund investors do not actually own the securities in which the fund invests. They only own shares in the fund itself," end quote. So while he does have an indirect investment in Humanwell, we can verify the statement he personally owns the stock is false. With your Verify, I'm Marshall Keeley. Former television anchor Janelle Stelson has returned to familiar territory in recent weeks. The Democratic nominee for Pennsylvania's 10th congressional district has appeared in a series of ads targeting the record of her opponent, Republican Congressman Scott Perry.
This is H.R. 431, the bill to ban all abortions in Pennsylvania and nationwide. And right on page 1 is Congressman Scott Perry. Perry would ban abortion with no exceptions, even for victims of rape.
So let's verify using the text of the bill. H.R. 431 was introduced in January of 2023, and Scott Perry is listed as one of the sponsors on the bill. The Life at Conception Act would, quote, "implement equal protection under the 14th Article of Amendment to the Constitution for the right to life of each born and preborn human person," end quote. The act, quote, "declares that the right to life guaranteed by the Constitution is vested in each human being at all stages of life, including the moment of fertilization, cloning, or other moment at which an individual comes into being," end quote. The short 3-page bill would effectively ban abortion nationwide, and the text does not include any exceptions other than noting, quote, "Nothing in this act shall be construed to authorize the prosecution of any woman for the death of her unborn child," end quote. So we can verify this claim is true. Still, H.R. 431 did not gain traction in the Republican-controlled House. There's been no action taken on it since the date was introduced and referred to the House Judiciary Committee. If it or a similar bill were to pass the House, it would likely be shot down in the Democrat-controlled Senate. With your Verify, I'm Marshall Keeley. York County District Attorney Dave Sunday earned the Republican nomination for Pennsylvania Attorney General in the spring and is squaring off against Democrat Eugene DePasquale, the state's former Auditor General. Sunday made a claim about DePasquale's endorsements in a recent ad.
Dave Sunday, endorsed by our law enforcement. Eugene DePasquale, endorsed by Defund the Police Groups.
So let's verify. The two groups featured in the ad are 1PA and Philly Neighborhood Networks. Eugene DePasquale's campaign website lists both of those organizations on the endorsements page, and the respective organizations' websites list DePasquale among the candidates they endorse. But do these organizations support defunding the police? 1PA is a progressive policy advocacy and social justice group formed in Pittsburgh in 2011. Philly Neighborhood Project calls itself a progressive activist group that backs progressive candidates. Neither organization mentions support for defunding the police on its web pages, but Philly Neighborhood Network did support a 2021 statement from an organization called Reclaim Philadelphia after the Philadelphia Fraternal Order of Police received a new contract. It states, quote, "We remain hopeful since the renewed contract does lay the groundwork for shifting functions out of the police department. The contract paves the way for defund work by making the process of removing duties and jobs from under the police department, crossing guards, traffic, EMS dispatchers easier. Reclaim and our partners will continue to pressure the city government to see that these changes are made," end quote. DePasquale is also endorsed by several law enforcement unions, including the PA State Corrections Officers Association and Teamsters Law Enforcement League. So this claim needs context. Yes, Eugene DePasquale has received support from at least one organization that has supported changing departmental structure and removing some positions from police department control, but it did not propose removing police officers from the force, and the groups do not solely exist to defund the police. With your Verify, I'm Marshall Keeley. Fox 43 continues to work hard so you can make an informed decision at the polls. We have information on each candidate in this election in our Fox 43 election guide. You can find that at any time on fox43.com. Thanks for joining us.